Hi everyone, so I've decided to make a quick tutorial on how I put together my LBB, my little black bra from George and Ginger. So here I've got all of my pieces cut out along with lining and main fabric. Pieces done, so I'm going to go ahead and start with the darts on the cup pieces to begin with. So I've gone ahead and cut out the darts here. I've gone ahead and notched my darts onto my fabric, and now I'm going to go ahead and sew those on. I wanted to go ahead and add a quick little, here, let me bring you in just a little closer. So something that I've started doing, because I have not had great luck with pencils or chalk or things like that on darker fabric, I will just take the pattern piece and stick a pin right at the top of the dart, pierce it all the way through each layer of fabric like that, and then in between the two pieces, so I've got 4 layers total, right? I've got lining and I've got main fabric. So between each pair, I will open this up, keeping it pierced all the way through. I will open this up and then take another pin and just pin through where that top point on the dart should be, so that when I go over to the sewing machine, I'll know where to fold. And then I'll just do that again in between these 2 layers. And then when I remove the initial pin, I should have a pin on each dart point, just like that. And you want them on the wrong side so that when you fold over, it'll still be visible, like that. Okay? Okay, so now I'm over at my machine. I've got 3 points and I've got 3 sets of the little notches for the darts. And so I will find 2 sets of notches just like that. 1 pin. That's how I know where to sew. So I fold those over with the right sides facing each other. Find my pin. Set that under my presser foot, and I'm going to set my machine to a stretch stitch. I'm going to start and back up a bit. All right. And then what you want to do is just sew until you get to your pin. I'm going to pull my pin out. I like to keep my finger just kind of in the general area and sew until I come off the fabric. Stop, raise my needle, raise my presser foot, pull that out, give myself some tails, and cut it off. So there I've got a nice first dart. And then what I'll do is tie these off where I ended, because as the instructions mention, that will help to keep a nice crisp point for your dart. So I will just knot this usually 2 or 3 times. I'm going to go ahead and just do 2 for now. Then I will find my next set of notches, my next pin, and do that on all of my main fabric and lining pieces. Okay, so we'll show you one more under the presser foot, right where the notches are. And then you want to line up your pin so that it's straight. It's gonna make a straight line for that end point. Stop before the pin goes under, and then just let it fall off the fabric. Now that it's off of the fabric, I will lift the needle, lift the presser foot, and give myself some tails to tie. And that is that. So I'm going to go ahead and continue and do that for all of my pieces. Okay, so now all of my darts have been sewn in. You can see the front side and the back side of each one of these. And so this is where my zippered version starts to stray from the instructions. So pretty early on, the next step in the instructions is to take each pair of lining and main fabric and stitch the center seam. I'm going to skip this part. Do not sew those together. So the next thing to do is to take the back sections for each piece, and I'm going to sew these side seams onto the back pieces. Okay, so in the instructions, you can still follow the basic instructions for these steps. Just remember to not sew that center front. So I'm gonna take my back piece and with right sides together, line up the side edges and sew these bad boys together. I'm going to put in a couple of clips. And I actually just got a serger, and I'm really excited to use the serger on this version, or this LBB, to get some nice clean finished seams. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and do my lining first, and then I will come back with the main fabric and do the same. Again, just lining up the side seams, just like that, on each side. A few clips. These are some little knockoff Wonder Clips that I got on Amazon for much less than the Wonder Clips. They were great. If I remember, I'll link that down below. Okay. And so our seam allowance is a 1/4 inch. So just remember that if you are serging, so that you don't cut off too much of your allowance. All right, let's scoot over. I'm gonna bring you a little closer. Just like that. Okay. Awesome. So there is the seam. It is nicely finished. Having a hard time getting that to show. Maybe if I back that up just a bit. Nice and clean. Okay, I'm gonna do that on the other one. Cool. So I'm going to do that to the main fabric now. One more time. All right, so those are all done. So I'm extremely new to sewing and absolutely new to serging. This is just the second thing that I've done on here. But from what I understand, you can either cut these down and then, oh, you can't really see that, can you? You can cut down these tails here and then just thread them through so that they're not loose. Or you can trim them short and use some fray, there's a little liquid fray stop that you can put on these ends. Two together. I'm actually going to skip back to straps. So you want to put these straps onto your main lining before you move on. So to do that, you're going to take each one and fold them in half in the right down the middle, and you're going to want to finish those edges, sew those edges together, leaving the small sides open. That way you can put elastic inside of these if you are going to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and stitch these together, and I'm also going to put elastic in my size for each of these. Okay, I'm back and I've got two straps nicely serged. I'm going to turn these inside out. Got my little turner, and just make sure that is open, if I can get that open. And I'm going to catch the edge, pull it through. People always make this look so much easier in videos than it sometimes is for me. Okay, there we go. Got it turning. So once it pops out the other side, I use my fingers instead of the little hook because it can pull on the fabric. And so now that is turned. It's really cute. Also in the instructions, there's several points where you should be pressing your fabric, pressing your seams, depending on the fabric that you're using. I have found that the main fabric that I'm using, the black one, doesn't press very well, but I will stop and press the lining fabric, which is this blue purple plaid. I believe it's a Rayon blend. So before I insert my elastic, I will go and press these so that I can get the elastic inside easily. All right. So I will just find the center on these, give it a press. Just like that. And then this one as well. Find the center, press, press, press. Steam it. Okay, so for the elastic parts, I will also use the turner and run it through the strap, and then I will attach the elastic to the end and get the corners of the elastic inside the strap before I start pulling, and then pull it through. Make sure to hang on to the end. There you go. Just like that. And then you can gently stretch, hanging onto the edges so that it's in there nicely. Once I get both of these in there, I will take this over to the machine and base the edges so that they don't accidentally get sucked inside to the strap. Do that again for the second one. Slip this inside the strap, just like that. Open the hook, and I will take that little hook and just snap it on there. Close the hook, and then put the corners inside this. Oop, I dropped it. That does happen. Try that again. So hook it, close it, and then get those corners inside. This is really hard to show you. And then just hold on to the edge. Ah, that broke right off. Try this again. Okay. Elastic, check. Strap opened. Okay, there we go. Hang on to the end, still holding on to the elastic, or to the strap, I mean. Pull it all the way through. Now you can take the looper off, and then holding both ends of the elastic and of the strap, you can pull on them so that they match up on the edges, and then lay this flat. Oh, something that I learned, which I did not know until I did it. I thought because my straps are, somehow they always end up just slightly smaller than the elastic. So the elastic does this, like, it kind of cups on itself. And I thought that if I just gave it a nice press, it would fix it. Little did I know that elastic should not be pressed. That is beginner, what's the word? Like faux pas. I had no idea. Okay, so now that that is in there, these get attached to the main lining. So my fabric for the straps, I decided to use the lining fabric for my straps because it's a softer material. So I'm gonna take this and attach it not to my lining, but to my main fabric like the instructions say. And to do that, I'm just gonna make sure that the outsides are facing me like this. And I'm going to line up the raw edges on this top little, there's a kind of like a tab that is cut out on one of the edges. That's where you want to line up your strap. So the strap and the raw edge of your main fabric will go there. So I'm just going to pin that in place. And we're just going to baste this on the machine, attach both of them, baste them, and then we can move on to the next thing. Okay, be right back. Okay, so I'm back to cutting table and we are going to position the strap onto the back piece. So what you want to do is you've got it attached to the front, okay? And you want for the right side of the back piece to be facing you, just like we did on the front. And you're gonna line up whatever the instructions say for your size. Mine is 6 inches. So I'm gonna place my raw edge and I line up the seam for the strap on the 6-inch mark and place that on the back piece. Raw edges lined up, and I'm just going to pin that in place. And the same for the other side. And that's 6 inches from the side seam. So here's the other side seam where the cup and the back meet. Okay, so I'm gonna find 6 inches from there. I'm gonna grab my other strap here. So we want it to eventually, this is what I do, I want it to attach or look like this when I'm done. So the seam is on the underside. Let me bring you a little closer. I want the seam to be on the outside. So to sew it down correctly, that means that my seam should be face up, right sides together at the 6-inch mark. Just for me right there. Okay, I can remove my ruler and I'm going to attach those two together. Okay, I'm going to go to this machine and baste these two in. Be right back. Okay, so I have my straps attached to my main lining. And now what we're going to do is take the lining and attach it, to my main fabric. And these are just going to be right sides together. Yeah, let's start with right sides together. Just like this. And here's the tricky part. Well, it's a little bit easier this way than it is to do in the instructions because the front is not attached. And so I have found this to be so much easier, but you do have to be careful of your straps. So I just take the lining and the main fabric and make sure that your straps are sandwiched between the two layers, just like this. Okay, and I'm gonna start pinning at the strap on each side where we just basted the strap onto the front cup of the bra, just like this, okay? And I'm going to continue pinning them together, and we are going to go from, just like the instructions say, from the start, right in the middle, the center front, we're going to go all the way around the top, the two back pieces, bring it all the way around to the other front, just to where the center points meet. Okay, again, making sure that the straps are sandwiched in between, making sure that when you are sewing them together, you're not sewing your strap into these pieces. You do not want to do that. Okay. Here is one of the back pieces. Back straps, that's where they go. Cool. These guys, oh, I didn't pin this side. Pin, pin, pin. Okay, all pinned. Now I'm gonna go over to my sewing machine and stitch these two together. All right, let's do it. Okay, I'm gonna try this view and see if you can see under here just a little bit better. Okay, so I'm going to get started and stitch all of these together. Once I get to the first corner, I'm going to stop. I'm going to lift my presser foot, turn, remove my pin, and this is a strap, so it's going to be a little bumpy, but that's okay. Just let the machine do its thing, and then stop, turn again. So here I have a dart. I should have a dart on the other side. I'm just going to make sure that they're pointed in the same direction towards the center seam. And I'm going to line these up. Okay, I'm going to set my presser foot down and let it start again. Take that clip out, make sure my back pieces are lining up nicely, and also checking for this strap that I do not want to attach in this seam. Okay, so I'm going to make sure that this looks good. Center seam, no strap. Okay, let it continue. Stop. I'm coming up on the strap again, so I'm just gonna pull it over so that it's not pulling tension in that direction, so that it can lay flat and straight. Okay, let it go again. let that run until we come up to, I'm gonna stop that, I'm getting a little out of line here. Again, pull on the strap so that there's no tension. Make sure these are lined up nicely. Okay, we can start again. Let that go. All right, we are over the strap. Awesome. I'm gonna stop that, remove the clip, and now we are just going to, again, make sure the strap is nowhere near this edge. Now I've got a little nick here because I'm using some scrap pieces of fabric that I had just enough of. Okay, so I'm just gonna make sure that those guys are as close as possible, and I'm going to turn that back on, letting the machine do the work. Okay, I'm coming up to the other side seam, so I'm going to get close and then stop, take that pin out, make sure that the strap is nowhere near. Okay. And I'm going to lift my presser foot and just tuck this under because I want the seam going towards the side seams. Okay, and I'm going to let that go. Okay, coming up on the other dart, again, I want my darts facing towards the side seams, so I'm just making sure that they're both faced in the same direction, which they were not, so I'm glad that I checked. Okay, I'm going to guide them underneath. Oh, see, these guys are really thick fabric, so they have a hard time sometimes getting guided correctly, so you want to keep your eye on it. All right, cool. We made it to the other front strap section. So I'm going to bring it close up to that point. I'm going to stop. I'm going to turn my presser foot. Start it again. Let it go straight across. And I'm going to stop. Turn my presser foot, or lift my presser foot, turn my fabric. And now we are in the home stretch. Make sure that the strap is not in the way. Okay, and this is up to the point where I'm going to be sewing. So I will just let it get there and then back it up a couple stitches, cut my threads, and we're done with that part. Let's go see how we did. Okay, so back at the cutting table, I'm just gonna look at my instructions. We've done that. Okay, did that. Okay, so now it says that we should be clipping the curves and corners and turning the bra right side out. Okay, so here is what I've got. So to clip the excess, I'm going to use some pinking shears. Just gives it a nice finish. So I'm gonna start from one edge and just cut any excess that is on the other side of where we just sewed these two together.
I'm wondering if I should have serged this seam so that I could have skipped this trimming part. Oh well, we'll try the next one. Okay. any of the elastic. There's really no need to trim too much of that off. Okay, I'm coming up on the other bra cup and the corner. Okay.
Last little bit here. I am not trimming this front seam that did not get sewn. I do not want to do anything with that just yet. Okay, so now I'm going to turn this out so that I've got the right sides. And look at that, looks good. Okay, so the instructions say that we can top stitch this if we like. And top stitching is sewing a seam, well, not a seam, you're sewing on the main fabric close to the seam that we just put in so that we don't have this like puffy top seam. So you will put these, if this fabric pressed better, it would be a great idea to press the seam so that it was nice and crisp and sharp, and then you would go over on the main fabric and you would top stitch along there so that it stayed nice and flat. So I am still gonna attempt to do that because I have done that on all of my renditions of the little black bra, and it does add a level of finishness, if that's a word. It does make it look really nice and neat. And for me personally, it feels, because I've tried it on with and without the top stitching, and it does make it feel a little more comfortable underneath the arms for me. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And then I will show you how I attach the band, which I do differently than the instructions because we have this open front. Okay, so I'm going to go top stitch that and I will be right back. Okay, so here's a visual of the top stitching. So I am just holding each bit down and feeding it through and trying to make sure that the fabric, the lining fabric, isn't showing as much as possible. And then I just feed it through. It has a little bit of a harder problem with the darts. That's some really bulky fabric, so you just want to push it through. Again, making sure that the back of the fabric isn't showing as much as possible. Like so. Okay, I've made it to a seam, and so I'm just going to lift the presser foot and straighten this out for the back. And I put my hand on the inside and just make sure that it's nicely flattened. Okay, so I'm just gonna finish that up, do the rest, and then we'll get to the band. Okay, so I have top stitched on the outside on the main fabric. Also shows on the inside, not as visible in here, but it is there. And now these two pieces of fabric on the top will stick together much nicer. It's not going to be as puffy up here. So it is definitely a good step to do. Try not to skip that one. I know it's very tempting to want to just skip that. I know I did in the first one, and I eventually went back and top stitched that top seam. So now what we're gonna do is work on the band, and I'm gonna show you how I do that with an open-faced little black bra. Okay, time for the waistband. So here is my waistband piece, and this is the right side. So I'm going to open it up like so, and I'm going to attach this entirely open, which in my opinion makes it so much easier. Okay, here's some little clips. I'm going to attach one corner to the starting side over here. Make sure you can see that. I'm starting over here. And remember, this is the front of the bra that we did not close. Okay, so you want to make sure you have both of those lined up. You can also baste that if it is easier for you to handle. Okay, so I'm putting one there, and I'm going to come all the way over, let me adjust you a little bit, all the way over to the other cup, and I'm going to attach this end with all of its layers, all 3 layers. Make sure that those are all clipped together. Okay, and then you do still have to do some stretching, so you're going to want to make sure that your center back is right in the center of your straps. Okay, clip it there, and then my next point is going to be the side seam. So I stretch it and then kind of walk my fingers in so that I can pin right there. Okay, and then between these 2 points, I'm going to stretch these, walk my fingers to the center, and pin these sections together. Okay, I'm going to do that again here. Actually, just like that. And again, in between those last 2. So I obviously use way more clips than the 4 clips. For me, the 4 clips was just a little too difficult because I don't think I have that dexterity that seasoned sewists might have with being able to do all the multitasking. So I use a bunch of clips. I try to make it as easy as possible on my hands and my mind. Okay, walk through, pin all 3 sections together, just like that. And I am gonna run this portion through the serger. And another thing, the instructions say that you should fold the back piece together like this. You definitely can. In my experience, although I am using a serger this time, I don't know if it'll be different. But the threads against my skin is just not great. So I leave this open and then I fold this over, and then I will hand stitch this on the inside with just a, what do they call that? Like an invisible stitch so that you don't see it. And then I will go over and top stitch on the outside to secure it down so that the edges are nice and clean. Okay, so I just have this last little bit here in the cup. So I'm just stretching and pinning and stretching and pinning. Oh, whoops, I just undid that first clip, so I'm gonna reattach those, make sure they're nice and lined up. And then between these 2 points, just walk your fingers in, make sure it's nice and lined up. Okay, I am going to take this to the serger and pray that it all works. I'm gonna put one more pin here. When in doubt, add more pins. Okay, here we go. Okay, so that is done, and I must say that was so much easier than doing this on the sewing machine. I see what all the fuss is about with these sergers. It's amazing. Okay, so let's see. Now that that is done, got that seam on the inside, and I'm glad that I actually decided to still fold this over, because this is just a lot of thread and a lot of seam, and I don't see that being comfortable against the skin. So what I'm gonna do is fold this over. I'm just gonna cover that seam, and I am going to hand stitch some of that in. Actually, I'm going to I wish that this fabric was easier to press, but since it's not, I'm just going to, I'm folding over the raw edge, and I'm gonna pin it in place so that I can hand stitch some of this, just like that. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and do that, and I will be right back. Okay, so I'm back with a change of heart. So the inside seam with the serging was just so much neater and nicer and laying more flat than some of the other ones that I've done. So instead of hand stitching this, I'm just going to go in with a top stitch on my sewing machine. We're just going to go for it. I'm going to go ahead and do this on the outside, so on my main fabric. I'm going to follow this line. We're going to do a top stitch. It's going to be great. And then we can get to the very last part, which is the zipper. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and do the top stitching like I mentioned, and I'm also going to serge these front ends so that we can get to the zipper. Okay? I'll see you in a few. These guys are finished. Finished. Now it is zipper time. So with these guys, these tails, I'm just going to not worry about them for now. They're gonna stay on until the very end when I can clip them off and put a little fray stuff on them. Okay, zipper. So I have a red zipper so that you can see it really well. Okay, this is a separating zipper. It is 7 inches long. It's from the brand Coats and Clark's. I got it at Joann's. And you can see that it is too long for my bra. Okay, but I'm going to show you what I do. All right, okay, it's zipper time. So here is my front. Okay, they've both been serged. I am using this red zipper, just a regular zipper with a separating bottom, and I want for these bottom edges to match. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is just pin them in place on either side. And for this type of zipper, you'll just stitch right up to where you need it to be. Okay, zipper time. So I am just going to take each one of these and pin them at the bottom, clip them at the bottom, and I want to make sure that they are lined up with each other. So I'm going to keep this closed. Okay, so just going to clip them like so. And then coming up here to the top, I just want to double check and make sure that these are lined up. Okay, looks good. So I'm going to take these to my machine. I'm going to open the zipper, not all the way, but I'm going to open it to about there, and I'm going to make sure that these are still lined up nicely. I'm going to put another little clip here. This side, line them up. And you want your back seam to be out of the way of the teeth. So you don't want them to be lined up to the edge of the teeth. You want it to be lined up behind because you don't want your zipper getting caught. Okay, so just make sure that they are behind the red tab, but not in line with the teeth. Okay, going over to the machine now. Okay, so now that I got the zipper going, it took me a couple of tries. You can see I sewed here and it just was not catching the underside, so you want to make sure that you're actually catching your fabric on the back side. Okay, so now I'm just going to sew along here. I'm only going to come to right before where the band starts. I will backstitch and stop there, and then I'll show you what I do next. Okay, so I have pinned everything down on the other side. I have adjusted my foot to the left zipper side now, and now I'm just going to sew this seam down until I reach the waistband again. Okay, I will be right back. Okay, so I had better luck with this side. I was able to catch it in just the one seam or one sew. So now what I'm going to do is finish off the bottom edges. So for that, I'm just going to zip this up just like that. I'm going to remove these pins and I'm going to sew down till I reach the plastic bits, backstitch, and then do the same thing on this side and backstitch. Okay, and then this zipper will be sewn on. I also like to, once that's all done, I will do another stitch down this edge so that it lays nice and flat. And then I'm going to show you how to do a little whip stitch up here on either end, and we can cut off the top tails and be all done. Okay, so now my zipper is sewn on, and obviously I'm using contrasting threads and zippers, and it looks like a mess. You can definitely do this much cleaner than I did. Those of you with more experience with zippers and steadier hands, but when this is all done in black, it really isn't all that noticeable. I really don't mind it. So what I do next is shorten the excess up here. So what you're gonna wanna do is zip this open, okay? And all that I do is flip this, here, you can flip this over. This is what the inside looks like. Trim these guys down. Flip this over, and I'm going to cut about, I'm going to leave about 1/2 inch past the top edge here, and then I'm just going to sew this little tab down, that excess 1/2 inch, and it'll be done. Okay, so I'm going to go and do that, and that'll be the end of this zipper front. All right, so that is the finished product. Seams are nice and laying flat. Zipper works. Oh, I don't know that I can do this with one hand, but I promise it works. Oh, there we go. It is separating. It is comfortable. These will, because this is a separating zipper and it's done on the outside, none of the inside things will be pokey or painful. So yeah, all around nice little hack. It's much easier to put on, and I absolutely love these bras. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you made it through and found some useful tips, I am so glad. That's all I was really making this video for. I had a few requests to see how I put this zipper in the front, and yeah, my first tutorial, guys. Thanks so much for asking and for getting me to come out of my comfort zone a little bit on that. I actually did have a lot of fun. All right, have a good one and see you later.